I'm Taylor. I'm going to walk you through the fund-to-fund model. So this is built to be a free model to model out a fund investing in a bunch of venture funds. And it uses the same core construction for all of the models I use for modeling venture funds themselves. So the core structure of the model is that there's a number of sheets that have details and explanations, resources, comparisons, those sort of things. But the core of the model is really around get started, key reports, and forecast. Those are the most important sheets. Now the get started sheet is kind of where all your inputs are, and all the inputs are blue text, gray background. Key reports is like the report of the key metrics, fund cash flows over time, IRR, cumulative cash flows, performance ratios. And this is for the fund investing in funds, not the underlying funds themselves. This is the overall kind of fund performance metrics. And the forecast sheet where the core calcs are. So on get started, basically the way it's structured is there's a set of assumptions here, which is basically the overall fund, committed capital, expenses for the fund, management fees, number of years that the fund operates in. And you basically set these for the fund, investing in the funds. And then there's a section here for basically the structure we're assuming for the underlying funds we're investing into. And then the fund performance on here is for the fund of funds. So in here, in this portfolio construction component, basically you're going to assume the basic parameters for the funds that we're investing into. Size of the total fund, LP investment into a particular fund, expenses, carry associated with the fund, what the fund's investment strategy is in terms of check size and allocation of invested capital new and follow, and then a number of parameters around like just expectations of like the returns. And the way that this gets used is on the forecast sheet. The top part is all around the performance of the fund to fund, basically same as all the venture models I build. And this is all the performance metrics for the fund to fund. And underneath, we have a section here called investments in funds. And what this does, this models out the underlying funds it's investing into. Now, there's a lot of lines here, and the reason for that is a number of the things we're doing in modeling out venture funds is we need to model them over time and think of their carry separately and their fee structure separately, and kind of stage all the capital calls in based upon the capital calls of underlying funds. And so each one of these sheets here has a number of like cohorts, and they're basically annual cohorts. So it's basically saying, okay, for new fund commitments that are made per period. Therefore, that creates a schedule of when the capital calls are going to come from those underlying funds. Those underlying funds, we're mapping out their own investment strategy over time for new versus follow, their management fee structure. So it's mapping out the capital calls that are happening from the underlying funds. So all of the funds that were committed to in year one, here's their underlying kind of capital calls, investment schedule, for example, for this one going over time. And for all the funds that were committed to in year two, here's the schedule what happens in them. All the funds that are committed to in year three, here's the schedule what happens over time. And so for each one of these metrics kind of reported here, it models out the performance of the underlying funds on an annual cohort basis, and then sums everything up into the sums there, which then links into the top above. And so the core thing to understand is that here on Get Started, we're making assumptions around the overall economic structure of the fund of funds, and then the structure of the underlying funds that the fund of funds is investing into. And then the performance returns here are going to show the overall performance of the fund of funds. So that's kind of the overall kind of structure for it. There's a few things that aren't included in this model. One, I know funds often will make investments into SPVs or do direct investing outside of the actual fund. That's not included in this free model. And then there's some parameters around the performance of funds underneath. Like it basically assumes that every fund is kind of the same. You can alter that on a per cohort basis to assume like different cohorts perform differently, but it does case of modification kind of do that. It's not covered in the free model. If you have any questions about this, happy to help anytime. Thanks.